So, good afternoon. Welcome to this panel talk. We will be looking into the show's key topic, which is reducing, or the long journey to a lower carbon footprint. This is something of a challenge for an industry that makes things. So you're making things, you have machines, factories to run, and then obviously consumers also play their part in a product's overall carbon footprint. So we have a panel today that spans the entire supply chain, which will be an interesting take on the subject from the raw materials, the building blocks, to the consumers and to the designers. Welcome, all of you. Let's start with each speaker introducing themselves briefly and the company they work for.
Okay. My name is Giovanni Henssen. I work for the company Fibrant, which is a Dutch-based manufacturer of caprolactam, which is the building block to make nylon 6. Okay.
Hi, I'm Prahl. I'm a sustainable design consultant based in the UK, and I work with startups, brands and manufacturers to integrate sustainability into design, mostly looking at design for circularity and what that entails, but also more recently really seeing what designers can do about the carbon footprint. So I'm really excited to be here today.
Okay, my name is Håkansson. I'm Swedish. I'm working as a freelance designer as well. I've been doing that since the late 80s when Alphaville had the latest hit. And working now mainly, I've been working with all major Scandinavian brands, everything from formal wear, and over the past 10 years with the Phoenix Outdoor Group and Fjällräven. Thank you.
Thank you. Markus Hefter is my name. I work for Polygiene, which is a Swedish company coming from Malmö in beautiful Sweden. And what we do is that we are delivering a technology that makes it possible that clothes can be worn longer and less washed.
Thank you. So with that, let's start. Let's start with the choice of raw materials. Performance Days, of course, is a raw materials show. And the manufacturing and processing of fibers and fabrics are believed to represent some 30% of a product's carbon footprint. So I want to start here with Fibrant and Polygiene. And can you tell us what measures your companies have taken to reduce the carbon footprint of your manufacturing processes and your product? Do you want to start? Go ahead.
You said Polygiene, therefore.
Yeah.
First of all, we are not producing products. What we do is we are an ingredient brand. So we are delivering a technology to the brands which offers the opportunity that they can be worn longer, as I said before. So what we do is we believe strongly in the 70% out of the 30% that you were mentioning, which is responsible for the carbon footprint, which is the consumer at the end of the day. And if you just skip one wash out of 10, you can extend the lifetime of the product and reduce the footprint of the product. So that's our philosophy in general in two sentences. We as a company, we are a very lean company. So the headquarters in Malmö, we have around 30 employees sitting there, and the rest of the company, they're all working from home. We don't have company cars. We have a smart travel policy as a company itself. Not even our CEO has an own company car, so they all travel public transport. So we're really taking care of the environment. We have an independent consultant working on that, so that is really taking care of everything what we do, and this is an ongoing project.
And it's something that you measure and monitor every year, and yeah.
Yeah, so things have been started already many years ago, but now we started the process 1.5 years ago, and this is an ongoing process, for the next years.
Yeah, thank you. Fibrant, Giovanni.
Yeah. Unlike Markus, we are a little bit more upstream, so we do indeed produce something, which is called, like I said, it's a caprolactam, the building block for nylon 6. If you look at the total carbon footprint of the final product, starting the calculation from the cradle to the final product, so basically from the feedstock at the beginning of it, which we are in, until the jacket in the store, then the production of caprolactam dominates quite a bit in the total footprint. So the measure that we took is actually that we reduced our footprint of the caprolactam with more than 50 to 70%. With that, we have a product that you can make a durable, a sustainable nylon that has a footprint which is roughly 70% lower than what is traditionally what's standard in the industry.
But is that about changing the machinery, optimizing, like new machinery that uses less energy, or is there something even in the chemical process itself?
It's a combination. We have developed proprietary technology that allows us to produce our product, the caprolactam, in a more efficient way. We also invested heavily in emission reductions. And the other beauty is that we are part of a chemical site where the waste stream of one factory, which is next door, is a feed stream for us, and vice versa.
Wow.
So that allows us to produce our caprolactam in, well, I dare to say, the world's cleanest way. And to, let's say, to communicate that to the market, we don't call it caprolactam, we call it ecolactam, to emphasize that.
Yeah. And do you think that is something linked to maybe the pandemic, or that companies work together to share their feedstocks and things like that?
No, that's more historically. We are, let's say, the share the feedstock is historically grown like that. It's like we are part of a group of factories. We used to be part of, maybe some people know this, DSM, which used to be completely self-sustaining, fully integrated. In the meantime, we are separated from DSM and continued as under Fibrant, but the infrastructure is still there, and of course we're making use of that.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the designers here. When you design a product, how much information do you have on its carbon footprint? Is that enough? And what measures would you like to see implemented to make your job, from material sourcing to product design, easier and more effective?
That's a very long question. Actually, the question kind of looks at the whole product. We don't have any information on the whole product. That's the whole problem. I mean, we're starting...
You do have on the components or not? Or
yeah, so I think starting with the materials, what's really exciting to see at this fair is that we're beginning to get the information, and we're getting it on materials, which is obviously one of the biggest impacts. But I think the problem is still, or the challenge for designers, is to put all the different parts together.
I'm sure.
But it's obviously great to start with the materials as the building blocks. But there's so much more we can do in considering the entire life cycle. Obviously, we hear a lot about consumer use and wash care, how they rewear, repair, and so on. So really...
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, sorry. It's just, in terms of the information, we haven't got enough, but we're seeing more information come through, and it's how to put it all together to make the right decisions. I think it's really what we're trying to figure out long term, to connect the materials to the manufacturer and the other sort of parts of the life cycle.
Thank you. Thomas, what's your view on this question?
Yeah, I think it's more or less the same. I think from my perspective, it was in the team where I normally work with, we start also to have a very proper brief about what is the aim for this product. I mean, based on functionality, a lot of the other things. And I think nowadays, I would say that there's a lot of things that are quite obvious when you can compare different materials, sourcing, etc. So I think if I compare to nowadays and some years ago, I think nowadays is much higher transparency in the processes. So I would say that I would have a problem to start to design or develop a product without really have that.
Really? Yeah.
Very clear.
So that's a key part of the information you're looking for. Interesting. And actually segueing into what Anne was mentioning, when we're talking about consumer usage, because it is part of the impact of a product, I think Polygiene has done an LCA on that. What's the situation on consumer usage? And then the question is, what features, functions, details can make a product, what can minimize a product's impact? But first, how important is the consumer usage phase in a product's overall carbon footprint?
So I personally think it's very important. Yeah. So I mean, you said it in the beginning. It's 30% is the production, and 70% is the consumer. So most of the part is at the end of the consumer. We just met last week in Amsterdam at a denim show, and the fashion industry is like 40% to 60%. It's a little bit different. So the production in the fashion industry is a little bit higher.
Has a higher footprint. Yeah.
So, but back to the consumers, I personally think it's key. Yeah, educate the consumer how to work with to get an understanding. Yeah, I mean, take a look at this hall. It's 10,000 square meters. So many people. Everybody's so educated. Everybody knows what they're talking about. If you go to Kaufingerstraße in Munich and ask people, what is your impression on CO2? How does a kilo CO2 look like? What is the impact of a kilo CO2 to the atmosphere? How can I avoid that? So ask people, and you will get answers like, oh, I don't know. So I personally think I'm a big fan of simplifying things and of incentivize people, telling them you're doing good things by whatever, you can do that, and then you have this and this and this result. So at Polygiene, we work with pictures. Yeah, so like saying, okay, if you skip that kind of washing machines a year, you save that much amount of water, that much amount of CO2, you save that much amount of time, which you can spend with your kids and all that kind of stuff. So you really, when it comes to the consumer, it has to be understandable and not so technical. That's most of the time
easy to understand.
The biggest topic for me.
Yeah. Giovanni, do you want to contribute something?
I just want to emphasize that I totally agree. I mean, that's the biggest challenge.
I mean,
you also mentioned the numbers, you have bits and pieces of data available on how good or how sustainable and less sustainable a product is, how to connect all of that. But I think it's also a big challenge to how to convey that message to the consumer level.
Yeah.
And I think in some markets or some products we're already used to that somehow. A washing machine, a car, any electric appliances these days carry this little label with the A++, a green bar up down to G. Even a house contains such an energy label. Green is good, bad. So somehow we need to simplify in what resonates with consumers. What is sustainable, what is less sustainable? Because otherwise, in the end, hopefully it's the brands who will drive that story at consumer level.
And at product level, so what kind of features, details, functions do you think Anne and Thomas can help minimize a product's impact at consumer level and usage?
I think I totally agree with this simplified. I think top of mind, I think the lifespan of the product.
Yes.
I like the idea of being able to replace the zip.
Yes.
Focusing, using maybe less components if it's doable.
Right.
And in a Lutheran way, I would say, I like the idea of bringing aesthetics through functionality and put more attention into that. Of course, now I'm talking from an outdoor perspective. When it's come to fashion, it's a different ball game.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But
I think
I think it's interesting in sports because we are thinking about function, so function for use, purpose, which is
it could easily be. I mean, you could also be attracted a lot of new technologies, but I think it's important also from a designer perspective and a brand perspective to have a clear vision of what you're aiming for with the product.
True.
Because that will be clear, and less things you need to explain in the chain from the sales guys to the
interesting point
to the consumer. I mean, you can easily talk about what kind of wool was it, or it was something with 3 letters and a number. I don't remember, but it could. I mean, that is the tricky part.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Anne.
Yeah. I think what you said about making it really visual is really important because, everyone's talking about infographics and having very, let's say, visual, easy messages. So I think it's really important. And I remember when we first started using recycled polyester, it was all about how many bottles are in this T-shirt and whether we agree with it or not. But I think that's the kind of thing we need to find for carbon and show the positives, because what does that actually mean if we're saving a kilogram here or 10,000? I don't know. I don't really have a clue. So, what does it mean? What are the positives of saving the carbon? I think that's what we need to share. And the other thing in terms of the consumer is the kind of education on materials, because what I've noticed, I work with a lot of smaller brands that are looking for performance fabrics, and I'm kind of directing them towards wool and tencel, let's say, which has become a performance combination. And people think, oh, but wool is really thick and I can only wear it in the winter. I mean, it's kind of, looking at the materials that have the, natural odor resistance and that kind of stuff, that we're actually seeing what can the materials do by themselves and how can we use them differently, and then also share that with the consumer. You don't have to wear a polyester top to go running. So I think we're seeing a lot more options coming through, and there's a lot of wool-based qualities here today.
Yes. Well, yeah, what you mentioned, and this is something that I run up across in my own work as a journalist, when we talk about a carbon footprint, we're talking about CO2 equivalents per kilogram for some, for others it's square meters. I mean, how is this a useful way of expressing carbon footprint? Is there something else that can be used? And then, will it become like a currency and we'll just be talking about it, and then like waterproofness, and then how much CO2 per kilogram? I don't know. What's your feeling about that?
Personally, I think it's a problem, even though I like the ambition with talk about this. But if I book a flight ticket, I have an option to cover.
That's right.
I go in the shop and buy food, I have it. And so there's a lot of this measure thing going around, and it could be confusing, I believe, from a consumer perspective. And we can easily feed them with a lot of things, but we keep in mind that it's a very complex process, where a former guy in the panel highlighted that, selecting the yarn, from where comes the yarn, in what part of the world, and what is from that, and all the components all the way into it's so many things. And I would love a system where you easily can relate to the relevance for a product and what this has been used, but for sure I don't have that answer.
No. Yeah, there was the Allbirds and Adidas shoes that were 7 CO2 equivalents per shoe or kilogram. I don't remember. And so if we have one, it's a good start, but we need every other shoe to have. Exactly.
But if you highlight a specific product, every brand can more or less say, okay, we have a key product that's really, here we go all in from a sustainability perspective, and that is a good start. But
we have to start somewhere.
How can we implement it on a wider level? For example, replace all lining with solution dyed instead. It's a small thing that affects a lot.
That's true.
Instead of, because we can easily, if we should be a little bit skeptic to our industry, sometimes we eager for the quick fixes.
Yeah.
and which is tempting in a way, but it's need to be.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Giovanni or Anne, on the metric itself, the CO2 equivalent? What do you sell when you sell your ecolactam? It's per kilogram per
it's
what?
It's per kilogram.
Yeah.
But I agree.
Then
it's
a fabric maker, it'll be per square meter.
Or per kilogram of fabric, which can translate back to a square meter or whatever. But it's kind of abstract.
It is.
Like you said, it's this T-shirt was made out of 60 bottles from the sea. You can visualize that quite easily. Which with carbon, it doesn't. So I like your suggestion. What you're doing, visualize it, making pictures. This garment saved like 10 trees of wood or something like that. But that still makes it very, I don't know, a bit of abstract. You need a metric. I think CO2 could be a good basis. But you need probably something like a system and a procedure, an ISO standard that says if a product is below a certain level, it deserves a green label, an orange label, a yellow label, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Coming back to that washing machine
Right.
label.
Well, this is, yeah, I mean, this is also part of the European Union's policies
Yeah.
towards, the Green
Green
Deal,
Deal.
the European Green Deal. And
Yeah.
so as we are used to it with our appliances, it is feasible, it is imaginable that in some distant future, every single product will have some sort of score.
Yeah, and that's
And so, would this be useful for you, or can there be unintended consequences?
absolutely. I mean, within this Green Deal, there are many initiatives being taken and many incentives
Yes.
for the total industry, not only for us, but also for us to become green. Subsidies, fundings, etc. But also regulations like carbon border adjustment mechanisms.
Right.
Let's say called CO2 tax. What's important, I think, for us, I mean, we made, with the introduction of our ecolactam, before that, we had quite a significant investment done to make it happen.
Right.
But you also need to create a level playing field for people, to prevent that people that do less on that aspect benefit from what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, do you see that coming into being or not? I mean,
I think it's coming into being. I mean, if we look at some countries already introducing a carbon tax, just when you import a garment, you pay a certain fee per garment, and once you prove that you take either back the garments or you produce or sell them in a sustainable way, you get a discount on it. So it's coming into play, and it has to come. Otherwise,
yeah,
the industry will not be driven to do more like this.
that's right. Yeah. You have, yeah. Yes,
Maybe just one thing, because
definitely.
what I said before. So when I started to, when we were talking about this panel today, I also did a little research on the internet, and I was like, and I asked my son, he's 11, and I asked him, okay, do you know what CO2 is? And he was like, yeah, it's a gas, it's bad for the environment, blah, blah, blah. And I said, but how does it look like that? And I was like, I have no idea. And then we did a research, and we found out, okay, for 1 kilo CO2, you can fill up 204 balloons.
Wow.
And then he was like, okay. And then I said, and then we were researching again. I said, okay, if you take a bath, it's 2 kilo of CO2. He said, oh, that's 408 balloons. If you take a shower, it's half a kilo of. So, and then he said, oh, then it's 102. And that's like kids learn to play with things, with visual things. And I really like that picture. Yeah, it's to fill up 200 balloons. Then you have a picture of that. And I mean, that's a kid's game. But that's the way how maybe we have to find out and educate the consumer at the end of the day. That they have something which they can visualize, which they understand. And then they can say, okay, if I do this, this is 200 balloons, whatever.
Interesting. Yeah, why not? Because it's a gas. And also, I mean, we breathe CO2 every day, so we just...
To the audience, remember now when you hear the balloon concept first launched. Unforgivable moment.
So moving on to the design side again, but also, this is a question for everyone. How do you factor in the impacts, of a... If you want to factor in a garment's impacts, how important is carbon, and what kind of trade-offs do you have to make or not compared to other elements, which might be biodiversity, circularity, longevity? I'm complicating this thing again, but I think how do you pick the right message or the right dominant criteria when you're choosing materials?
Yeah, I think this is a really important question because we're all struggling with it, because we have to make these decisions and we have to make trade-offs. And I heard a very interesting, or read a very interesting term on LinkedIn the other day, carbon tunnel vision.
Carbon tunnel. Oh.
Carbon tunnel, vision. So where, in a way, we've had a lot of marketing and a lot of stories about carbon. And sometimes, the carbon question is so important that we forget, let's say, about circularity. How does it affect my product if I use this material? It's better in terms of carbon footprint, but I can't recycle it, or it's not compostable. So I think that's the really difficult situation. that we have to deal with. And I think it really depends on the brand and on the product.
Interesting point.
So
Yeah.
there's not really one way to do it right, but it's very difficult for designers and developers to make the right decisions in that way, because you have to make sometimes decisions, is it durability, is it circularity, how do you decide what is best for the planet?
Yeah. Thomas, do you have the same?
Yes, I have.
problem?
I think it's very complex in a way, and I think also we talk specifically about the garment, and you can measure it from any perspective, everything as you said, but also if it's part of a collection and they use less fabric that you can use for other purposes, reinforcement, a main fabric in one product could be reinforcement on another product, because the more things you add into the product, you should need double check what is that carbon or what kind. So the simplifying the process is also important, I think.
Yeah. You think we need more simplicity?
Yes, and put little bit more, evaluate
Each
over
choice.
seasons, what every part of the collection, could we maybe use this? Of course, I realize the hard facts and figures is a price on top of it. But sometimes we maybe look into much, achieve a specific price instead of say, okay, we have less waste, we can use that fabric, we buy more of that fabric. So there are things that I think in the process could be improved a lot.
Right. Yeah. And that would mean then measuring the
Because,
each
if you're
stage.
measuring is some specific trims or zippers or fabric, the less you need to do it for everything you add, you need to double check that as well.
Right.
And it's complex within the buying organization as well to be aware of it. So Sure.
Okay. That pretty much covers. Do you want to add something, Markus? No. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Sophie, the worst thing about questions is I have a microphone and I have an observation.
Uh-oh.
But there are questions to take from the audience. I want to come back to something Markus said. I work with a guy called Mike Berners-Lee. You might know who his brother is. He was the one who started to put carbon ratings on everything we do. If you want to buy a book, How Bad Are Bananas is the name of the book I recommend you get. And if you want to start comparing things to other things, he does a very good study on how a kilo of cheese has the same carbon impact as a pair of running shoes.
Oh, no.
But if that running shoe, and this is what the rest of the panel are saying, encourages you to walk to work or to cycle to work, it actually has an overall negative effect. But if you get too fit and healthy, and then at weekends you start going around to fell races around the country, it goes the other way. So please take the notice of the panel. It's not just the product. The more important thing is how you interact with the product.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the observation I wanted to make.
That's why we wanted to have the designer's
I've been
point of
stalling.
view.
I've got a question. I'm going to take as many questions as I can. So I've got two questions. So I'm going to start off with Maren.
Thank you. My question is actually for Markus. I was quite interested in the storytelling aspect. Now, how do you guys treat that? Because I also come from the storytelling background, and I know it's quite difficult to not veer off into the greenwashing when you're simplifying too much.
Good point.
Especially the part with the balloons, I get it, I'm with you, but then at the same time I see that as kind of dangerous because it makes it so simple and it really kind of abstracts the whole message from the global holistic perspective of what we're talking about. How do you guys treat that? I mean, do you have a sort of plan B when questions occur, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, maybe.
Hold on, Markus. Before you offer that, we're going to take the second question. And I think it's only fair to point out Maren has a panel later today, so you can get your own back with how difficult that question is. But David?
So it's whoever can answer, but we hear a lot and everywhere, how to say, reasoning and basically arguments about, like using the right materials, like right construction quality and everything, but there's not really much of a conversation about the whole supply chain and specifically how the, let's say, the garment is built. So there's I don't know, an American company is making stuff in Vietnam, and then the fabric is coming from Taiwan, a trim is coming from Italy, another trim is coming from, let's say, China, Northern China or something. And then they start from Vietnam, then they fly back to America. And then from America, perhaps, if they don't have distribution center somewhere else. So that's like, it's like a pinball, it's just like that material continues, to cover stuff. Or, I don't know, maybe a material that is shipped to, from Taiwan to, let's say, Central America for those doing near shoring, and is not served because it's not available maybe perhaps in the Americas. So the whole supply chain, I guess, is also something that needs to work. So the question is, why there's there's a lot of focus, obviously, on materials, because that's what we're doing here, but it's much broader. Why there's no conversation on a broader aspect, like as you say earlier, like even a phone or a book or something has made, where are all components sourced? Because a designer could have like a great vision and a cradle-to-cradle approach, but then at the end, there's a search and allocation, right, or procurement, whoever they are, division, then they are placing stuff around, and shifting things.
Okay, thank you for that. Thomas.
Sophie, 2 questions. First one is, are we oversimplifying it? And do we want to risk on that? And the second question
do
is...
we need more
it's
complexity?
not just the material, it's the whole geopolitics of it.
Okay.
So maybe to the first question, that was just like, maybe it was a bad picture, but I was just like trying, playing with my kids. And what it showed to me is that they have a natural instinct and a natural ability to play around and think about in a positive way. And that was like where I was surprised when they are now going somewhere and they're saying, hey, we did that and we saved 50 balloons, ha ha ha. So it's just like, they're young, and educating the next generation, maybe for them it works. I fully agree that this is a bad picture for the rest of the industry, absolutely. For the rest, I think personally, I also rely a lot on really based information. And what I found interesting was that there was an interesting study recently released from Deloitte. And what they did is they were asking consumers on their behavior in terms of sustainability and all that kind of stuff. So when I'm right, so they asked about 1,900 consumers in, I think, 15, 16 different European countries, and asked them, okay, how important is sustainability for your buying decision and all that kind of stuff. So they came up with, I think, 85% said it has an influence. And out of this 85%, 70% said the biggest factor is durability within sustainability. So, and that shows, that's from the consumer says, I want to buy a durable product. Yeah, that's for me the main criteria in terms of sustainability. And we should really not overcomplicate. That's what I want to mean. What I want to say with a lot of information, a lot of kind of stuff. Just say, hey, this one is a durable product, and this is how we can achieve this durability. That's our approach from Polygiene, saying, hey, if you just skip 1 out of 10 washes, or if you skip every second wash, you extend the lifetime of the garment to the double. So that means you don't need to buy a new one. Yeah, the products last longer. The value of the brand to the consumer increases dramatically, because you say, okay, you buy a quality product, it lasts longer, I can keep that for a long time. It keeps me fresh, it keeps me alive, and that is for us basically the intention how we work.
Yeah.
Hopefully that works.
There's also the notion, if I like a product,
Second
I feel
question
good
is
in it.
not for me.
So go ahead, Thomas. Yeah, the whole shipping.
Yeah, I think
finding suppliers. You need to be a locavore now.
Yeah, but I think that's interesting, because I think it's we know in our industry they tend to be that you just buy fabrics somewhere there and ship it to that, and trims all over, and mainly focused on price and other things. I think it's for sure a responsibility we need to have in the industry. And luckily, after COVID, we realized now that we need to have a second solutions, maybe in Europe with the European supply chain. I also think that long lead times also tend that you speculate in what you actually buy. And that brings maybe, in the end of it, the profit where you need to reduce the profit in the end because you buy too much. So I think in the business model, to be more precise, more flexible, and being able to pay that price, because of course it costs the price on top of it. But I think it's in a very measurable way should be way, because I think it's provoking in a way to just acting and shipping things without any really strategy.
But are there serious moves to reduce overproduction? Because that would definitely lighten the footprint.
That's the beauty of capitalism in a way. In a painful way, you will realize that buying a lot of things that
is
not commercial.
Yeah, yeah.
And especially consumer. I heard it also from the early panel, the way we relate to fast fashion, for example, and things. We need. I think we need to be maybe more aware of that part of the consumption.
Yeah, interesting point. Charles, do we have other questions from the audience?
Yes, but you also have another Charles opinion. I want to come back to Thomas. Have you seen the development? We keep on talking about the fourth industrial revolution, nearshoring production, bringing it home, that of course will reduce overproduction because we can react faster. Are you actually seeing the change go on? Is it, to me, I hear a lot of talk about the fourth industrial revolution. I see very little evidence.
Yeah, so do I. But maybe some
long question from Charles, exact answer from Thomas. Are there any more questions?
And did you want to contribute?
I just have maybe a bit of a controversial one, because we're talking about overproduction. We're here at a fabric fair. There's all these new materials being made. And I'm kind of thinking, maybe we need to stop making materials and using up all the materials we've already got. I think, what are we doing? We're churning out more and more materials that will end up somewhere that we're not using. So I know it's not the most popular choice, sort of suggestions at a fair that's showing materials for the future, but I think we need to make much more of the existing materials, see how we can utilize them, and what is really great to see is all those material hubs, the material sort of, where you can buy leftover stock, how companies are working together, and that ties into also using, waste from other industries. So I think that's something really positive we need to talk about, and we need to push much more rather than churning out endless new things that we won't be able to, recycle or whatever.
Though I don't think they're exclusive. I mean, you can imagine, as Thomas was saying, that we make products simpler and then rely on, maybe just one lining for the entire collection and make it dope dyed and just be a little bit more efficient in the sourcing. But then if I'm a fabric supplier or if I'm a spinner, I'd be happy to spin just a single product for the whole year or whatever. I mean, it could also be good for the industry. They need to develop new products because needs evolve and fibers evolve, and we need to, but that doesn't mean that we're overproducing, I don't think. I don't know.
Of course, I mean, we are, I think I'm very fond of innovation as well. I think innovation that we can do a lot of things with fabrics, with trims, in the manufacturing process as well.
Yeah, new solutions can
I think
arrive.
Well, in that case, but you have a point there, of course. You just struggling on and measuring things based on commercial turnover without really any commitment for carbon footprint. It's not so nice, I believe. So I mean,
I'm not seeing any hands go up, and that means that we will bring this session to a close. You have the opportunity to speak to 5 people here who are all cleverer than me. I'm sure you'd rather pick their brains than listen to me. But if you aren't going to ask questions, can we show our appreciation for Sophie's panel, please?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great show.
If you're really quick, you can grab the panel members now for a one-to-one conversation. Don't let them escape yet.